Okay, so next up it is the Sylvan Elves, which was requested, so I'll be doing them now. So I'll just set up a battle and then we'll go through their roster. Okay, so the Sylvan Elves have got a slightly smaller roster than the previous faction we looked at, but they are a little bit more focused than Gundabad, whereas Gundabad had sort of a rather large variety of things that they can do. Usually the Sylvan Elves have got one real strength that they can bring to bear against their opposition, and they are a bit overly reliant on it, to be honest, and that is, of course, their archers. But we'll get onto that in a moment. To start with, we'll have a look at their melee infantry, and we'll start off with the Forest Wardens. Now, relatively cheap. 600 florins is not too expensive, but for the cheapest unit, well, the second cheapest unit you have available. Actually, no, they're the same as the Sylvan Spearmen now. But yeah, 36 defense is pretty good defense score, to be honest with you, and they are individually a good unit. They don't have very many, though, mind you. I have turned the unit scaling down from huge a little bit, so they do potentially have more. But the Forest Wardens are a good unit, and they are technically mid-tier infantry, sort of similar to the Gondor infantry, that sort of level infantry. They're not super high tier, but they are pretty good. And you will be having to use some of the lower tier units of the Sylvan Elves because all of their high tier stuff is very, very expensive. And they have slightly less variety than the High Elves, so you are going to be reliant on a few individual units as opposed to spreading your resources out. The Sylvan Spearmen are pretty similar in this respect. They have slightly less defense, actually. That's very odd. Usually spears have got slightly more defense and slightly less attack, but it seems like the Forest Wardens are just straight up better. They're both well armoured. They can both make shield wall. Interesting. Well, the Sylvan Spearmen are another one if you wanted to pad out your line with a little bit more cheaper infantry. And, you know, they'll get the job done. They're better than most other very low tier units that, for example, the Orcs can bring to bear. Orc Band are going to be no match for Sylvan Spearmen. So, a pretty decent unit, although I would say that the Forest Wardens are probably what you want to go for in this situation because they seem to be just straight up better. The Woodland Warriors. Now, shock infantry is very important, and Woodland Warriors are no exception. They are actually one of the more important units in the Sylvan Elves because they are slightly more expensive than the Forest Wardens and Sylvan Spearmen, but they are significantly cheaper than the units that come ahead of them. And the Woodland Warriors have got some decent stats as well. They have a fairly high attack score, pretty good defense score as well, honestly, for what they are. And of course, they will be able to get more damage done than the vast majority of other units around them for a decent price as well. They have a bonus fighting cavalry, which is something that a lot of shock infantry has lost. You know, most of the axe units, it must be said, are the ones that have the bonus against cavalry. I've always liked the Woodland Warriors. I feel like the Sylvan Elves have always had a bit of a problem with regards to getting value for money. And the Woodland Warriors have always been one of the exceptions to that. They are pretty expensive, but they will pay for themselves pretty easily. And they're not easily wasted, like some of the other units that you can mention on this list. Speaking of which, we have the Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen. Now, they are, of course, slightly better. In terms of stats, they have better attack, better defense. They don't have a bonus against cavalry, but they're better in every other way. 900 florins is a lot, though. Particularly for a unit which is better used in an offensive way, just like the Woodland Warriors. Oftentimes with the Sylvan Elves, you're probably going to be wanting to invest the level of 900 florins into something like spears, because you're going to need something to hold the line to defend your archers, as opposed to the Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen, which, unlike the Elder Enway Swordsmen, they still suffer a little bit, in my opinion, from being a little bit too expensive and a little bit too squishy. Like, I would get the Woodland Warriors simply because they're a little bit less, they offer a bit more value for money. Sylvan Heavies, there are two-handed swordsmen which come later, which I'd much rather get than these guys. The Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. Now they have hit points, they have a very high defense score, and this is a unit which you're probably going to be wanting to use a great deal. You know, they were the unit with the Sylvan Elves, which in melee at least, in vanilla, you couldn't really do without. It's sort of the case here as well, although they do share that distinction now with a unit which is just over there. There aren't very many of them in a unit, but still a very, very important part. The spears of the Sylvan Elves are what will defend your archers, and your archers are what will give you the victories most of the time. Now, the Hia E Lang, they are essentially a better version of the Sylvan Heavy Swordsman. They've got a new unit model as well, which looks fantastic, by the way. They look like the Sylvan Elves from the Hobbit movies. good stats and good sort of attributes, you could say. You know, combat bonuses, effectiveness against armor, very well armored, very good stamina. 1,100 florins is a lot, but they are also very, very good. They do a lot of damage. I would be much more likely to get these than the Sylvan Heavy Swordsman if I wanted a slightly higher tier unit. There is a better two-handed swords unit, which we'll get onto in just a moment, but the Heer Elang are still a good unit to get. And the Heer en Ek, or Ik, I don't know. I'm not good with Elvish. This is the spear unit which you're going to want if you can afford it at all, because it is, again, a slightly better version of the Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. They are also slightly more in the unit. A very, very important unit for the Sylvan Elves, this. 2 hit points is very important. Bonus fighting cavalry as well, which a lot of spears actually don't have now. A lot of spears don't have that bonus against cavalry, which is, you know, a bit of a downside to a lot of spears, but these guys do still have it, which is important. Shield wall, very good unit. I do like this. They've been buffed recently and they needed it because they were outperformed and the Sylvan Elves needed a solid front line. However, the most impressive infantry unit you have available to you as the Sylvan Elves is the Sindar Blade Masters. Again, I've talked about these guys before. They have been rebalanced a little bit, but them and the Haven Guard are the 2 best shock infantries, and the shock infantry is very, very strong in Reforged. If you can bring these guys to bear, they will do a ton of damage to the enemy, and if you can combine that with your very impressive archer presence, you're going to be able to get a lot of kills in a very short amount of time. Now, the Elder Palace Guard, these guys have been changed a little bit. I actually haven't tested these guys out, which is why I was complimentary of these guys over these guys. You'll notice the 5 hit points. They've got 54 men in the unit. This is one of those very, very high tier, very expensive units. Obviously, it's intended for your general. Now, defense of 58 inspires nearby units, can do Skilltron. Skilltron is an interesting thing to have for such a high tier unit. Again, they are kind of, you know, they're like spearmen without the shields, but with such a high defense score and such high hit points, they don't really need the shields. Yeah, very much a general's unit, very similar to the Mithril Guard in many ways of the dwarves, but dwarves, I've been playing too much Warhammer. But yes, the Elder Palace Guard, we'll be testing them out in this demonstration, so I'll be able to see them in action. Now for the archers, which are the part of the Sylvan Elves which you're going to need to use to its fullest effect to get really any sort of victory. The Light Elven Archers, the lowest tier of archers, obviously they're pretty awful in melee, but 13 missile damage for the lowest tier of archer is very good. They're also pretty good value for money. Now, in a skirmish fight, they do suffer from having no armor, which means they will lose in the vast majority of times. But if you needed to pad out your archer line with something a little bit more affordable, there's nothing wrong with these guys. The Sentinels of the Woodland Realms are slightly better, essentially. They're slightly better in melee, they've got slightly better attributes, and they have a bit more missile damage, but they are still a bit vulnerable in a skirmish fight because of the lack of good armor. And the lack of hit points, of course. It means that they are going to lose to the likes of most factions' higher tier archers, particularly the human factions, and the other Eldar Enway archers from the High Elves, but still not a bad choice if you needed to save a bit of money. Ultimately, I would still go with the Light Elven archers because they are noticeably less, whereas these guys, for 1 missile damage and a little bit more melee expertise, you're paying 200 florins per unit. That's not really worth it in my opinion. The Sylvan Heavies are a little bit more like it. They are very well armoured and they have 14 missile damage as well. 1,000 is a lot for an archer unit, but they are still, you know, they will be able to win the vast majority of skirmish fights with a unit that doesn't have hit points, which is important. There are, of course, a few units which will give them a good run for their money, like Eldar Enway archers, and also a lot of the human faction archers will be able to at least equalise with these guys. The Woodland Sentinels are essentially the same thing, only they have a little bit less, well, they're much less survivable, but they have a bit more missile damage. Now, it's really dependent on what sort of map and what sort of situation you're in, whether these guys will be worth it over the Sylvan Heavies. If you're defending in a siege, yes, because it's going to be more difficult for the enemy to try and kill you in a skirmish fight, and you're going to be able to lay down that extra missile damage. If you're in a field battle, no, because there's going to be a skirmish fight, and the Sylvan Heavies are much better placed to go toe-to-toe with enemy archers in that respect. The Elder Royal Guard are essentially, you know, 15 missile damage, no hit points, but, you know, excellent armor and a lot of attributes means they're better than the Woodland Sentinels. Again, 100 more florins, but it's worth it in my opinion. Very good unit indeed. Now the Heer Bang, or Bang, they are very similar in many ways. They don't have as much attack in melee, noticeably less attack actually. But they do have more men in the unit, which means in a skirmish fight you could say they're better. Very interesting. The archer variety in the Sylvan Elves runs very deep. It's the part of their army which is very, very versatile. And that's important. But yeah, the Hiri Beng are probably, in my opinion, more worth it than the Elder Royal Guard, just because they've got more men, which means you can get more arrows down range, and that tends to be a little bit better. Again, when it gets into the melee fight, though, they are worse. It's as I've said, the archers. You can't really go too far wrong with the Sylvan Elven archers, honestly. Now, the Elder Royal Council and the Sindar archers are both excellent. They're both pretty much the top of the tree in terms of archers now. The Sindar archers got a little buff, but the Elder Royal Council are still the best, in my opinion. 16 missile damage, 2 hit points, and all of that. All of those attributes make them a very, very strong army indeed. And then we have the Cavalry. Now, the Elder Pathfinders are a decent cavalry. They are, of course, the sort of elk cavalry, 2 hit points. Pretty good. And then the Elder King's Guard, which is slightly better. Unlocalized placement text. Nice. 3 hit points, of course, slightly better. Only 16 in a unit, though. And that goes up to around 30 when you have huge unit scaling. There are too few of these guys, in my opinion. They're too easy to single out. Then there's the Elder Reavers, which are a very good horse archer, of course. 14 missile damage is pretty damn high. They can't really compete with the Grey Company, but they are very, very good nonetheless. Ballista, Catapult, and Bjornings, who, if you really need a cheap shock infantry, this may well be worth it, although the very low stats make these guys a risky proposition. I've never seen Bjornings transform into bears either, so maybe this is a case of this unit is maybe not worth it so much anymore because of its very low stats. Anyway, we should get on with picking an army. I've been on this screen quite a while, so I'll have the Elder Palace Guard as my general's unit, and now we'll try and spend as much money as we can on our archers. Let's have that as our archer force. We won't have either of the general's bodyguard units because things would get rather expensive, and the Sylvan Elves, I might not even be able to have a full stack with the Sylvan Elves, to be honest with you, because of how expensive all their things are. Let's see if we can. That's a pretty decent spear line. How many Sindar Blade Masters can we have? 3. That is nice. Okay. Now, what else shall we have? I'm going to forsake cavalry for this one, because we're up against orc factions with quite a lot of halberds and spears, and I don't think the cavalry is going to serve us in this situation. Let's see, here Lang, I'll have a couple of them. A couple of woodland warrior. Actually, wait, we'll get rid of the. Here Lang. Get those two, and a couple of forest wardens. Oof, that's expensive. Right, can we get some shields for these guys? Perfect, 0 florins exactly. Okay, so let's start the battle, and I will allow you to rejoin when the armies are about to clash. Okay, so the new box is real. The Misty Mountains are a little bit closer than I'd have liked. And there are a lot of them. Never mind. The Elder Royal Guard will make quick work of some of those units that they have. Although my front line is kind of thin. It looks thin anyway. I always did like the Elven Spears and Shield Wall though. They look pretty darn nice. Speaking of which, there's these units as well, which look absolutely terrific. Here an ick or ek, I don't know. Okay. So I'm not entirely sure what the Misty Mountains are intending here, but I do have all of my woodland warriors ready to charge in. I'm going to actually have 2 of them swing out a little wider. These 2 will be the ones to reinforce the line when it inevitably starts to get damaged. There's actually a gap here because of this bush, but never mind. I'm not too worried about the Mordor army because I do have 3 units of Sindar Blade Masters over there. Goblins are not moving forwards. Strange. Let's have a look. Got a lot of heavy goblin halberds. just seem to be standing here taking the arrows. There's a lot of troops there. None of them are particularly scary next to some of mine, but the amount may be a little bit too much for my very thin line to bear. Mountain Uruk Blades, there's also Orc bodyguards in there. Goblin infantry is not so scary. The Mordor army actually has quite a few more elite forces, but they are smaller, and none of their units are as elite as my Sindar Blade Masters, so this front should be relatively okay. Misty Mountains are not too eager to advance though, which means they're just eating a lot of archer fire. Let's speed this up a little bit. Aha! So finally, they deign to advance. There's a gap here as well. I don't think they'll go for it though, mind you. Mordor very steadily advancing. Already got chevrons on my Elder Royal Guards, they must have gotten a decent amount of kills. My Heavy Goblin Halberd is nearly gone, to be honest with you. That's a lot of casualties they've taken. And that one. Decent amount of casualties across the board there. They are trying to flank around and wrap around my lines, which is rather unsurprising, but I need to wait for them to get a little bit closer so my wooden warriors are close to my forest wardens. What on earth are they doing? They separate themselves off, I'm not too concerned about that. They still are not really advancing in earnest. Which is odd. Look at all the bodies over there. Again, their aggression leaves much to be desired. The AI seldom cooperates with me, it seems. Can I attack them yet? Nope. I'll tell you what. You attack them. You attack the Mountain Uruk Blades. Good lord. They have taken a ton of damage already. 8% of the enemy army is killed, so that's basically 16%. The Misty Mountains army is gone before they even managed to engage. Which is the AI's own fault, really. What are they doing? They are very content to just sit there and wait for Mordor, I guess. Which is not really going to help them out too much. Okay. What have we got here? Uruk Halberds, go for them. And more Uruk Halberds, attack them. I might even run out of arrows in my Elder Royal Guard before the Misty Mountains comes forward. I always like the look of the Woodland Warriors as well. I like their axes and I like their armour. Understated for elves. Forest Wardens don't really have armour as such. Here comes Mordor at least. I think they will probably attack immediately. They have Orc Band at the front. That unit of Mountain Uruk Blades has taken a considerable beating from my archers. So I am going to run out of ammo, it seems, before they... Ooh, hold on. Are Mordor going to make the first move? They are indeed. Okay. It seems. Enough of this. Right, they are actually going into the side over here, which is a real pain. The elves, something else that's also notable is that the elves are seemingly faster than a great deal of other units, which the Sylvan Elves do need, if we're being honest. Okay, that Orc Band is going to die. Ah, right, good. At long last. They are going to just head directly into my Forest Wardens from the front, which I'm more than happy to accept. Defeat seems certain for them. What on earth are these guys doing? That is ambitious, guys. Not gonna lie. Get those guys. You can't have people wrapping around like that. Underground goblins. Those Uruks are going to get ripped apart by those Sindar Blade Masters. Those wooden warriors can stay in reserve. And these guys can go into melee. They're pretty good in melee. Still got my Elder Palace Guard ready. The spears should hold. This is a Sauron's Will unit though, so they might actually do a decent amount of damage. Those Orc Maulers won't though. They did manage to sort of get in here to the gap that I sloppily left, but the Woodland Warriors are there now, so things should be fine. What's this? Another unit of Uruks. Those Morinov Guard got ripped apart. They managed to kill one Blade Master, which is something. No, stop. What are you doing? That's not where I'm asking you to go. Hello? Some of that classic Medieval 2 AI. The game seems to want to do what it wants. It doesn't seem to know that you know best. Right, those Mountain Uruk blades are going to the side, but they are also engaging my spears. I only have one unit in reserve now, which is these guys. Oh, Underground Goblins, victory seems certain, we should get in there. Right, and that leaves just my general. Well, actually no, I've got an archer unit here. Fuck it, you can charge in as well. Goblin infantry. Up against this. Victory is a distinct possibility over here. Let's get my general into the fight. Have him finish off this heavy goblin infantry. Over here, meanwhile, utterly crushing the Morinov Guard. Sindar Blade Masters, though. Really glad the Sylvan Elves got these guys as well, because they are so good. And it gives them a really good infantry unit that they can use, which is always something they were kind of missing. Mountain Uruk Blades are being very handily beaten. My spears have held fast. This unit over here took a few casualties, but that was because they were the ones that were... Oh no, this one over here took more casualties. Interesting. Let's have a look at my general unit. They hold their spears like a two-handed sword, so I'm wondering if that's the basis of their unit. Obviously 5 hit points means I very much doubt anything in the enemy army can kill even one of them. Maybe the Orc bodyguards could kill a couple after they've been made a little battle weary. The Sylvan Elf speed is something which is very, very welcome. What's going on over here? Goblin infantry defeat seems certain. These Woodland Warriors are going to mulch their way through the goblins. My archers are still firing, still got a decent amount of ammunition. Over here, this unit of Woodland Warriors. My Forest Wardens took a bit of a beating, but that's not surprising because they did get a rather the bulk of the enemy attack over here from the Misty Mountains. Which is smart, I suppose, from the AI. It was the weakest part of my line, but still very odd that they advanced as they did and let me shoot them so much. Right, those archers have sort of overlapped and into the enemy lines. Those Black Mountain Uruks are going to be a bit more of a problem. These Sindar Blade Masters. Actually, you know what? You can go around. These Uruks are... Actually, you know what? Just get into the Uruks. It'll probably cause them to break. Oh my! Actually, no. Sneaky, sneaky. Well, that's a close range hammering that they're receiving there. And they're about to get stomped all over by these Sindar Blade Masters, so archers, you can just go over here and allow the swordsmen to deal with them. That is going to be a very one-sided fight indeed. More heavy goblin infantry. Those woodland warriors' victory still seems certain even though there's only 26 of them. There are quite a lot of goblins over there as well. Just going to send some spearmen in. Support my archers that are attacking. Right, meanwhile, Sindar Blade Masters once again proving their worth in abundance. Kill those orc maulers. Don't want any more infantry getting in behind me. My archers don't seem to care that you're there, orcs.
The battle seems to be swinging in our favor. From such tidings does victory emerge.
Such tidings.
Spearmen!
Well, that is a large break from Mordor. They're still over here though. Well, actually no, that's Misty Mountain's forces. Right, get into the back of those mountain orc blades and cause them to break. They are wavering. They are killing some of my archers though. It's a real pain. Sloppy play again by me. This goblin infantry is... These woodland warriors really have taken quite a few losses, but they have taken on a full unit of mountain orc blades and a full unit of goblin infantry. So that is fine. They got a lot of damage done. More orc maulers. Not a single elder palace guard has yet gone down. Meanwhile over here, the mountain orc blades are about to break. I'll give the enemy their due. They are at least making the effort to attack. Right, meanwhile, send my forest wardens in to help against the orc bodyguard. The orc bodyguard's not a bad unit. Those orcs are finally breaking. There goes the Misty Mountain General. Oh, the Elven Palace Guard Archers, or Royal Guard Archers, have got axes as their weapon that they pull out when they're out of armor. That's pretty neat. Meanwhile, there can be no escape from my arrows. Okay, let's get into the orcs over here. There's some black orcs, which have done a pretty decent amount of damage over here to my woodland warriors and to my spears. But they managed to get a slight side charge on. Black orcs are no joke. They're a pretty good unit. Ooh, that's unexpected. My general is... They've actually taken out quite a few of them. What are they fighting? Orc maulers? Elves, please. You're better than that. Guess I just wasn't paying attention. Okay, let's get into the bodyguards. Let's finish them off. Oh, they're still coming back for more. Oh, look, Temple Inquisitors. Let's overwhelm them. More black orcs, more on guard. Well, the orc bodyguards are about to die. The Misty Mountains General already died, actually, so... We'll turn our attention over here to where the Mordor General is. As soon as he dies, that should be game. Orcs not known for their staying power in melee once their general is slain. Where is their general? Around here somewhere. Temple Inquisitors are a good unit though. Oh, there he is. And he died. No match for Sindar Blade Master. A blade through the... Well, I guess Nazgul don't really have heads. What used to be his head was run through by the Sindar sword. Right, the Temple Inquisitors probably won't break though. But I think that is the only unit that is left in melee. No Sindar Blade Masters over here. Yeah, there you go. I don't think they're going to break. They're one of those units that has got the highest possible morale, which is unsurprising. They are in a bit of a pickle, it must be said. I don't think they're going to be able to fight their way out of this one with all those spears. Especially not with more Sindar Blade Masters coming in for a rear charge. Let's get these archers in as well. Really close the jaws. It is a brave last stand, but ultimately it will be fruitless. I do really like the new Sylvan Elf units. They look fantastic. Oh, they're not going down quickly at least. Well, I guess they kind of are, but they will fight to the last, and that's what matters. Let's speed this up a little bit. No, they really aren't eager to die. 13, 12, 11, still 11, 10, 9, 8. Black Numenorians are no joke. I think they did get given a buff actually, so that would explain a great deal. But Mordor always were. The Black Numenorians always were a very good unit, and I think they deserve a bit of a buff. I think they deserve to be one of the best. My units are very tired. Look at this. What's going on here? There are only 2 left, 1 left. There he is, and he's dead. Victory.
Behold how our cowardly our foe is
Well,
utterly
Misty Mountain's got a decent amount of kills. Let's have a look at these battle
remember
statistics.
it as the day of our most glorious victory.
The archers, of course, for the Sylvan Elves are always going to be the primary source of your kills, and no different here. You know, the lowest was nearly 600, the highest was just over 750. The spears held the line, you know, very admirably. The spears not meant to get a lot of kills, they're just meant to stand and fight. Sindar Blade Masters, a lot of kills, of course, that's what you'd expect. The Woodland Warriors did very well as well. And the Forest Wardens held the line just as well as the spears in this case, but of course, you know, they took a lot more casualties. But yeah, the Sylvan Elves, they haven't really changed in how you play them from vanilla in the sense that you are still reliant on your archers, but there's nothing wrong with that per se. It just means you aren't quite as versatile as, say, the High Elves, but I do like the Sylvan Elves. I think that with the latest round of buffs to some of the factions that need it, the Sylvan Elves have become much more competitive, and there's something to be said for having a skirmish-heavy faction. People don't like it when you kill their army from range, they get kind of salty, but you know, what else are you meant to do as the Sylvan Elves, huh? As for what I'm going to do next, I think we'll make a return to the evil factions. Maybe Harad. But we'll see. We'll see what people want me to do. But I hope to see you for that.